Welcome to Pario magazine, where I chat with individuals who have a desire to create. Today, I'm joined by the creative mind behind the upcoming adults-only Christmas comedy, A Very Naughty Christmas. Welcome to Pario magazine, Alex Woodward.
Hello, thanks for having me.
My pleasure. So we're here today to chat about your journey bringing A Very Naughty Christmas to life. Before we dive into that, though, do you want to give our audience a brief little introduction as to who Alex is away from the theatre?
Yeah, I'm a Brisbane boy. I'm 35. I've been working in the arts since I was 18. I have always loved music and theatre, and I delved into bands. And then I went back into the theatre world. I lived in Melbourne and Sydney, did theatre there, went back and studied, played in some more bands, and I toured the country in musicals for a few years, and then COVID came, and I decided then I wanted to focus on creating my own work. I'd always been doing that, but I wanted to, I suppose, shift the focus away from doing performing and just focus on producing.
Okay, yeah, so you started as an onstage performer in front of the crowd. What then
Yes.
sort of led you down that path to know I actually want to go behind the scenes and build out these shows for other people to then perform?
I suppose there's an interesting scene here in Brisbane. When I graduated from uni, like I did a music theatre course at the Queensland Conservatorium here, we don't have the same kind of independent musical theatre and independent theatre setups and systems that some of the other big cities like Sydney and Melbourne do. So like obviously in Sydney, there's like Hayes Theatre Co. There's some other small professional independent theatres like Darlinghurst and Ensemble. And then, in Melbourne, there's things at Chapel Off Chapel and all the cabaret scene there. But here, there wasn't really that avenue. So after graduation, people would often finish and go, well, I've got to move to Sydney or Melbourne. There's nothing here. There's no kind of entry level stuff for me to get into. So I was like, well, why don't we just and people would complain about it. Like, oh, there's nothing going on. There's nothing to do. And I was like, well, why don't we just do something? So it kind of started like that. And that was 6-7 years ago. And I just found a small theatre, booked it, got together a group of my colleagues from university, and we started putting on shows. And then from there, that kind of was like a tumbleweed that just grew and grew and grew. And every show got a bit bigger and a bit more money spent on it. And to the point where, we started as, a few of us doing a show together, to me actually getting to the point where I was getting funding and we were selling enough tickets to do kind of fully professional shows. And yeah, now all we do is professional independent theatre productions. So yeah.
Awesome. So yeah, it was just let's stop complaining about it. Let's fix the problem.
Yeah, I think it's so easy to fall into that trap of like, oh, there's nothing going on. Like it's so hard. And it is so hard, but I love to think of solutions, and I love to kind of be like, well, there's nothing going on, so let's just do it. Like that was I suppose when I used to play in bands when I was like 18, 19, 20, like you were always hustling and you're always like, I've got to book a gig, I've got to do this, I've got to do this. So it was that kind of hustle mentality of putting gigs on that I don't think, music theatre graduates necessarily had. And to me, that was just like a natural progression. Like just, well, if you want to do a show, just put one on.
Must be very proud now to see it at the level that it is at now.
Yeah. I mean, so the company now, we've done 17 productions over 6 years, and it kind of like,
Jeez.
so, even Christmas, it started as something small and now it's grown bigger than Ben-Hur. So yeah, very, very proud at how it's grown. And yeah, it's been a hard journey, but yeah, very worth it. Very worth it.
And then before we shift over to the show, how did you first discover this passion for musical theatre? It's obviously a very strong passion if you were willing to spend these years building out a company.
It's very interesting because most people I know who love music theatre, they were brought up with it and they went to acting lessons and singing and dancing as a kid, but I wasn't. My brother was living in London. So I was 18, my older brother was 22 at the time, and he had been living in London for 2 years. And so as a family, we went over to see him at Christmas time. And as we were there, mum and dad were like, oh, well, we've got to go see a musical. Like it's what you do when you're in London. You go see a West End show. And I was like, oh, okay, cool, sure. Like I don't I don't really know anything about that, but why not? And we went and saw, as cliche as it is, we went and saw Wicked. And I was like, oh my God, like I'd never seen a show with like such massive production values. And like, even though it's a very, how do I describe it? Like Wicked's an amazing show, but even though it's a very like commercially driven show, it is a very clever show. And that kind of was like, oh no, musicals, these can be cool. Because I'd only previously seen like, I don't know, Sound of Music on movie or something like that. I'd never had that kind of real visceral live experience. And I think from then I started being more interested in wanting to see more shows, and it just kind of grew from there. It's kind of by a like fluke chance that it happened. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Like
feel
if my
like
brother did move to London, God, I don't know if I would have been on that trip, if I would have seen that show. Yeah,
it could have been a whole different life path.
exactly.
Yeah, I feel like a musical theater has really evolved recently. They're not just drab one set, the whole show plays off in one room. Now it's
Yeah.
you've got your Wickeds, you've got your Lion Kings, what else? Book of Mormon, like in the background
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Hamilton, they're all extravagant, crazy. Harry Potter as well. I heard that is
Oh my gosh,
absolutely
amazing.
outrageous.
Yeah. Like what? And there's just something very special about the live experience, I think. Like I love films, I love movies, but I love, you see a show, it will be slightly different every night. So it's that, I don't know, I suppose it's like the danger involved with it. Like anything can happen at any moment and anything can change. And yeah, I find that just, you feel connected. Yeah.
So then shifting across to A Very Naughty Christmas, how do you describe this show for people that may not be aware of what it is?
We've been trying to figure out the elevator pitch for this show for a long time. And we think the easiest way to probably describe it is like Carols in the Domain meets Rocky Horror Picture Show meets like Magic Mike. It's like a silly, irreverent, fun. It's like stand-up comedy. It's dancing, it's singing, it's parody, sexy, bit of skin, but ultimately like it's a silly night out. So this show was born out of the fact that here in Brisbane, like I think in life you have two sets of family. Like you have the family you're born into, and then you have the family that you choose, which is like your group of friends. And every year my kind of solid group of friends, we would like, we'd be like, oh, I want to, like, I love you. I wish I could see you on Christmas Day, but I'm always with my family. And so we would have a thing called Friends Christmas, where a couple, like on the weekend before, we'd all get together, we'd all dress up in kind of dodgy outfits and buy each other really crappy presents from like the $2 shop and do like a dodgy Secret Santa. And it was something really fun and special about that and sharing that day. And I suppose as a person who loves theater, I was like, I wish there was like a theater show that I could go to with that family, with that group of friends. But what I found here when I looked for something is there wasn't really anything. Like all there was kind of like family focused, family driven, but aimed at kids, or was kind of religious in some ways. And that's just not that. I mean, I don't have kids. I'm not religious. So I wanted something that I wanted to see, a show that I could go to with my mates, have a few gins, have a laugh, something silly and fun, and that we could just have a great night out. And we could go to dinner before or after, or we could kick on to the pub, and that's kind of where it was born from, wanting that.
Yep, I think that's a great sort of motivation behind this show. And have you found that there has been a stronger audience than you perhaps expected for this type of show?
Yeah, and I remember the first year, what really surprised us is the demographic. Like we thought our demographic would kind of be like 18 to 35, young people. We thought we'd have, quite a strong queer audience, which we do, but we didn't realize that we'd also have people kind of in their 50s and their 60s all turning up, and couples, and like it had a broader demographic than we ever anticipated. And, we've been really lucky. We have a very loyal audience who come back year after year after year, because every year is a new show. So this is our 6th year. And we've had people that have been coming since day one, and they'll come up and they'll find us and they'll be like, oh my God, I loved how you put in this year. And how you had that song from years ago, but you did it slightly different and stuff like that.
That speaks highly for the quality of the show, I guess.
Yeah, and look, I'm amazed because the first year we did it, the show was terrible. Like, it was so bad. I mean, I'm being harsh because we're our own harshest critics, but when we first did the show, we kind of had no idea what we were doing. Like, we knew what we wanted. We're like, oh, we want this like fun, singy, dancey, comedy, sexy thing. And we kind of just like went out to this massive group of mates, went, hey, come on, all be in it. And then, one of our other friends was writing bits, and we learnt very quickly what things worked and what things didn't work. And we learnt a lot about like getting the audience in the mood for the next song, et cetera, and about structure and the formula of the show, and how to make it the best possible experience for our audience.
And now that the show has evolved, with it being an adults only show, so that everyone is prepared before they go and check this show out, how risque does it get?
Like relatively risque. Like the most risque moment is probably like we have a big burlesque number in the show. That's pretty risque. Kind of like Magic Mike Live. We have a male-female dance, and then we have a female burlesque number. I mean, the language, there is some like very sex positive stuff in the show, and one of the women sings this song that gets, it's out there. It's full on. But it's that interesting thing with comedy where the line is different for everyone. So we try and like make sure that we get to that line and go just over it for some, and then pull it back for the rest of the audience. So it's like, we don't want people to feel uncomfortable, but what some people want is different to others. And yeah, but look, it's definitely an R18 plus kind of show. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. And with the show incorporating such a wide array of theatre disciplines and skills, does that make the casting process sort of a rather lengthy process?
Yes. Like, we've been very lucky. 3 of our cast members have been in since day one. And so they really understand the show. And when we, over the years, it's taken us a lot of time to figure out what is most important. And now we know the most important thing is comedy. Like, you've got to have good timing and natural comedic timing, because if everything else goes awry, if the show's funny, it doesn't matter because people are having a laugh and a good time. So like, if we stuff up some lighting cues, or there's a song which doesn't sound as beautiful, if it's funny at the end of the day, it's okay. Like, ideally, we want everything to be perfect, but we put a real emphasis on the comedy side of it. But we've figured out now kind of like what types of people we need for the show. And also because we have these 3 pillars of performers who have been in the show since day one, we can find other people to kind of like complement what they do, which has made it a lot simpler. And yeah.
Brilliant. And then obviously with the show being Christmas themed, there's a shorter window for when you can perform this particular show. Does that add a level of excitement and commitment from the performers?
Yeah, I think like it's this interesting thing because obviously for, I suppose, 46 weeks of the year, there's nothing to do. Like, I mean, myself and Dan Vens, who is the directorographer, as we say, we get together months before the rehearsals start, and we like start coming up with ideas and content and spitballing and stuff. But, we're only in the rehearsal room for 2 weeks, and then we're doing 4 weeks worth of shows, and then it's done. So it's kind of starts and is over in the blink of an eye, which is like, it kind of makes it, the performers don't ever have a chance to get sick of it, because, that first week of performances, they're just like finding their groove. And then the second week, they're just enjoying it. And the third week, they're like, oh gosh, we're closed next week. So it makes it really enjoyable in that sense, that it's always fresh and you're always craving more. You don't get to, like, no one really has the opportunity to get to the point where they're like, okay, I'm bored. I'm done now. Like, I know when I've toured shows, like toured in Book of Mormon, and, I think I did 450 shows or something.
Oh boy.
And like, you know, like I had an amazing time, but it does get to that point where you're like, okay, I'd like to be at home tonight in bed. You know, like it'd be nice to just sip on some gins and watch some Netflix. And yeah.
Yeah, I guess like at most you could maybe do a short run in like July or something for Christmas in July.
Yeah.
But yeah, really that's the two times you could run this show.
Yeah, we've thought about it. We thought about doing like a very naughty Easter or something as well, but we're like, we don't want to like cannibalize our audience, and we've got a good thing going, and we know that every year we'll have a certain number of people turn up as well, which is really awesome. Like we've had, well, we've moved theatre this year, which has been interesting for us. But you know, the last 3 years, you know, we've had 5,000-6,000 people turn up. And the thing that kind of holds us back is literally just theatre capacity. So we just can't fit more people in that short period of time, because the show sits really well in kind of, well, in Brisbane, there's not that many theatres that are between that kind of 300 to 700 seat mark. There's only really 2 spaces. So yeah, it's just that thing of like fitting enough people in, especially on weekends, you know, like everyone wants to come Friday, Saturday. So
yeah. Yeah, I was going to ask if there was ever the thought of expanding and doing other themed holiday shows, but I guess like you said, you don't want to cannibalize the audience.
Yeah. I mean, we have many a time chatted about a Halloween show, but it's just it's too close to Christmas.
Yeah.
So it's like, and also we know we'll be exhausted because we would open that and then we'd be like, oh God, okay, now we need to start rehearsing the next one. And we'd just be so tired, and yeah, no, pass.
Yeah, I guess Easter, St. Patrick's Day, maybe they're like the other two options, I guess.
Yeah, maybe we need to start branching out into different religions.
That could be an idea.
Yeah. A very naughty Ramadan. I don't know. I don't think it would go down well.
Yeah. So in terms of the show, do you have a favorite moment or favorite act in the show?
Actually, there's a new original song in the show this year that I'm really, really loving. I think because every year, like we work to find new content. So the show is made up of like 50% content that we've done previously over the last 6 years and 50% new content. But this year we have this great song singing about Santa. I'll just give you the title. The title is Santa Loves You Less Because You're Poor. I really like it's really fun. It's silly and it's like a bit of commentary on society, which is really, really great. So I love that. And then there's also one of our new performers. He does this great song, like it's a take on walking around in a winter wonderland, which is excellent. So I love that too.
Brilliant. And then how are you feeling ahead of these upcoming performances?
In Sydney, I'm excited. We haven't been to Sydney before. We were meant to tour the show. So in 2019, we booked to be able to tour the East Coast in 2020, but obviously that didn't happen. Yes. And this has kind of been the first opportunity that we've had to actually get out of Brisbane. So like, it seems like a lifetime we've been waiting to do it. You know, we were even meant to do it in 2021, but then the borders shut and like Queensland was so strict on their borders. So it's just taken forever. And we've just been so ready for years.
Yeah, these last 2 years have just been devastating for everybody that had these big grand plans and then all of a sudden out the window.
Yeah, I mean, it was so crazy in, start of 2020, in March, or late Feb, early March, I was in London. I was doing a recce trip to see shows and all this stuff. And I came back and then I went to New Zealand for a week. And then I was back here in Australia and it was locked down. I was like, oh my God, I'm so glad I got in 2 overseas trips before all the borders shut. So I felt very lucky in that sense.
Oh, well, at least now we're finally getting on the road and you'll be in Sydney for a nice 3-night run.
Yeah, exactly.
And then looking further into the future, you mentioned sort of doing a full East Coast tour. Is that something that's in the plans for perhaps next year?
Yeah, that is the plan for next year. And we're also hoping to take the show to London next year as well. So that it'll involve us kind of having multiple casts doing the same show in different places. So that'll be interesting and in a challenge in itself, but we've been working towards it. We've been putting the pieces in place for a long time to be able to make that happen. Yeah, it'll just take a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of focus. But, we want to cast all Aussies in London. So it's kind of like a Stella Direct from Australia kind of show. And we're going to set up another show down south that can kind of service Sydney and Melbourne. And it'll be the same show everywhere, but just different people.
Okay. Yeah, I guess that's another challenge that you wouldn't really think of with a theatre show, where you could just tour the same cast around for every show, but this one, they all have to kind of be on simultaneously.
Yeah, exactly. Well, otherwise we just run out of time, which is so hard because it's so much easier to just train one cast. But that's a gig, I guess. We've shot ourselves in the foot.
Yep. We'll definitely encourage everyone to go out and check this one out. Where is the best place for people to support you and track this creative journey moving forward?
If they just head to averynaughtykchristmas.com or just Google A Very Naughty Christmas, and we're one of the first things that come up. And our company is called Woodward Productions. You can Google that as well. And we list everything there. You can join up to our mailing lists, all the things.
Perfect. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me, and good luck with this season.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.